Hi. You think you want to know the truth about the life of a Native American healer? Forget all those romantic stories about shamans, mysterious herbs, and magic around the campfire. There is no magic here, no kind spirits. There's only cold, filth, and death creeping in from every corner. But before you get comfortable, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm really curious to see who's joined us. Now, settle in. We're about to begin. You wake up in the pre-dawn cold, feeling every bone in your body, and none of them in a good way. You had forgotten, maybe for the briefest flicker of time during the night, that the world is made of wind and frost and the aching smell of damp fur. The wind whistles through the slats of bark that make up your shelter, as if to remind you that even after so many years, nothing has changed. You lie on your mat, made from reeds that now seem to have more holes than fibers, and you try to remember the last time you had woken up feeling rested. You fail. You can hear the camp stirring before you ever open your eyes. There is the cough of a woman who has not yet seen 40 winters and never will. There is the shrill, plaintive cry of an infant who was born only to be cold and hungry. The dogs are already awake, or maybe they never slept. Sometimes you envy them. They at least have simple desires, and they rarely suffer the anxiety that comes from being expected to keep everyone alive. The old women are arguing over something petty. You cannot make out the words, but you know the tone. Disappointment, anger, maybe a joke lost somewhere under the years and the hunger. You wonder, as you do every morning, what fresh disaster Tode will bring. Will it be another child with the fever that has been going around? Will it be an elder whose leg is so swollen and red that you know you cannot save it, but you will have to try anyway? You know the answer, even if you try not to think it out loud. Today will be the same as yesterday. Today will be full of misery and filth and the nagging sense that you are little more than a witness to a slow extinction. Still, you rise. It is not heroism. It is not even duty. It is only the knowledge that if you do not get up, someone will bang on the side of your lodge and shout your name until you do, and that is somehow even worse than the pain in your back. Your knees crack when you stand. Your feet are numb and swollen, pressed into the hard ground by so many years of walking, running, kneeling at the bedsides of those who needed you and those who only thought they did. You shiver as you dress, pulling on the same threadbare clothing you wore yesterday and the day before and so many days before that. Once, your clothes might have been decorated, maybe with some colored beads or a strip of quill work, but now they are only functional. They are made for surviving the world, not for being seen in it. The smoke from the fire stings your eyes, but you are used to it. You have learned to breathe through it, to blink through it, to ignore the tears. Everything you own smells of smoke. Your skin, your hair, your medicines, even your dreams. You are the healer, but you know that all the medicine in the world cannot keep out the cold, or the wind, or the constant grind of hopelessness. As the sun finally drags itself over the horizon, you go out into the open. The world looks almost beautiful for a moment, glazed with frost and light, but you know better. Beauty in your world is always temporary. It is the thin crust of ice that covers a mud puddle, pretty, but it will shatter the moment you step on it. The people are gathering, some because they must, and some because they have nothing better to do. You try to remember when you last had a day with nothing better to do, and you cannot. You are the one they come to, not because they think you are a miracle worker, but because you are all they have. Some days you wish they would look for miracles somewhere else, but you know they will not. There is nowhere else. A little girl comes to you first. She is shivering, sniffling, her cheeks red from the cold and from the fever that has taken so many. Her mother stands behind her, eyes hollow with fear and exhaustion, holding a bundle of rags that is probably another sick child. You smile because that is what you are supposed to do. You kneel and touch the girl's forehead, feeling the heat. You already know there is nothing you can do except give her some warm water, a pinch of bitter roots, and a promise you cannot keep. Behind you, someone is shouting that the stew is burning. Someone else is scolding a dog. You think for a moment that you should be grateful for these little annoyances. They are proof that life continues, even when you know it should not. But the feeling passes. You know, better than anyone, that survival is a losing battle. Your tribe, your people, your own fragile body, everything is always falling apart, being patched together with hope and habit and a thin layer of dirt. You are the healer, but there is no healing for what ails this place. Still, you gather your bundle of medicines, step into the day, and wait for the next disaster. That is all you can do. That is all anyone can do. You remember, before you even finish washing the sleep from your eyes, that today will be much like yesterday. There is a mother waiting for you by the dying fire, clutching her baby as if her arms alone can keep out the cold and the illness that gnaws at small, soft bodies. You see her silhouette through the haze, and you know that hope, that dangerous flicker, is alive in her, though it has long since guttered out in you. You trudge across the uneven ground, each step an ache. You hear the baby before you see it, a thin, rasping whimper, the sort of sound that tells you this is no ordinary cold. The fever has been burning for 3 nights, she tells you, and the baby has not nursed since yesterday. You do not ask why she waited so long to come. Everyone waits. They wait until they have nothing left but you. You kneel in front of her, ignoring the icy mud that soaks your knees through your leggings. You reach out, taking the child's tiny wrist in your hand. The skin is hot, almost blistering, and beneath it the pulse is thready, frantic. The baby's eyes roll back, and you see that she is barely here. Her mother looks at you as if you can conjure a future where children grow strong and old, but you can only offer her the reality you know. There is nothing you can do to turn back time, to give her clean water, enough food, or a world where fever is not a death sentence. You mumble words that sound wise because you have learned how to shape your mouth into the right kind of comfort. You tell her you will do everything you can, and this is both true and a lie. You do everything you can every day, and almost none of it is enough. From your medicine bag, you take a dried root and begin to chew it. You spit the bitter pulp into your palm and mix it with a few drops of warm water from your skin bag. This is a ritual as much as a remedy, because ritual is half of medicine. The mother watches every move, desperate for hope, desperate for meaning. You smear the mixture onto the baby's lips, hoping some part of it seeps in, some small part of it matters. You know the odds. You have counted and recounted every child who has come to you like this over the years. Most do not last more than a handful of days. Sometimes you pretend you can tell who will live and who will not, but it is never true. Sometimes you pretend that the songs you sing, the herbs you grind, the smoke you wave, have any real power beyond distraction and the small comfort of trying. The mother is crying now, quietly, as you work. You want to say something that will help, but there is nothing left in you but the dull weight of practice. You tell her to keep the baby warm, to keep her close to the fire, to try to feed her if she will take it. You offer a small charm, a bone carved with a clumsy bird, the only talisman you have left that is not already promised to another sick child. Behind you, someone else calls your name. There is always another need, another body failing, another pair of desperate eyes. You stand, feeling the mud cling to your knees, and squeeze the mother's hand. I will come again soon, you promise, though soon means nothing when time only brings more pain. You move away, leaving the mother with her bundle, and she begins to sing a lullaby, her voice breaking. You wonder how many more times you will see her do this before her arms are empty. You wonder, too, how many mothers have sung their children into the next world because you were not enough. You walk away with your medicine bag heavier than before, not because of what is in it, but because of what it cannot hold: miracles, salvation, a world that is anything other than cruel. You look around at your people, at the thin smoke rising from every lodge, at the faces drawn tight with hunger and loss. For a moment, you almost allow yourself to hate them, these people who expect so much from you and give so little in return. But that passes, replaced by the old familiar numbness. You do this not because you love them, or even because you care. You do it because if you stopped, you would be no better than the animals who crawl off into the dark to die. You hear laughter somewhere behind you. A group of children, not sick yet, are playing with sticks and bones, pretending to hunt and kill imaginary enemies. Their joy is sharp, unnatural, like the spark of flint. It will not last, and you know it. Their mothers know it too, but no one speaks of it. It is a rule as binding as any law. You do not talk about how brief happiness is. Your own stomach cramps with hunger. You have not eaten since the day before, and even then it was only a handful of dried meat and a mouthful of sour berries. You ignore it, as you ignore all your own needs. The others come first. They must, or the fragile order of things will fall apart even faster. You pause for a moment outside your shelter, looking up at the gray sky. A lone bird circles overhead, probably looking for carrion. You wonder if it is wiser than you are. You take a deep breath of cold air, taste the smoke, the damp, the bitterness of regret, and you go back inside to prepare for the next suffering soul who will need you. That is your life. You endure and you make others endure, and no one is ever really saved. Not even you. Your hands are still cold, and your shoulders ache when you return to your small, smoke stained lodge. For a moment, you allow yourself to sit, bones creaking and joints grumbling in protest, as you stare at the battered pot that sits over the weak embers. This is breakfast, though the word is too grand for what is actually before you, a thin, colorless soup, barely more than warm water, with a scattering of withered roots and a single stubborn scrap of dried meat floating near the edge like a survivor, clinging to driftwood. You ladle the liquid into a carved bowl, feeling the weight of it, light, insubstantial, unsatisfying, like so much of your existence. You eat without ceremony, chewing each mouthful slowly, letting the bland flavors dissolve on your tongue. There is no joy in this meal. There is no memory of abundance, no promise of satiety. There is only the mechanical, necessary act of staving off the inevitable, one swallow at a time. As you eat, your mind wanders because it has nowhere else to go. You remember times or stories of times when the hunt was good, when the pot overflowed with chunks of venison, when the women laughed as they traded spices and tales. You wonder if those days were ever real, or if they are only the shared hallucination of a people who need to believe things were once better. It is a clever trick of memory, and you are not immune to it. Still, your stomach reminds you, with every hollow rumble, that memory is not meat. You finish the meal, licking the wooden spoon and gnawing at the leather hard bit of meat, knowing well that you will pay for it later. Every bite is a gamble. Will it nourish you or will it poison you? You have seen the consequences too many times. Children doubled over with cramps, elders wasting away from unseen sickness that lingers in every cracked bowl and dirty hand. You, the healer, are as susceptible as anyone. Your body has survived by sheer stubbornness and perhaps a touch of luck. You stare at the empty bowl, your hunger only half muted, and set it aside. Around you, the air is thick with smoke, ashes drifting down in lazy spirals. The firewood is almost gone, but you make a silent calculation and decide it will last until nightfall, maybe. No one has time to collect more, not with so many sick, not with the snow still on the ground, not with the threat of rival tribes lurking at the edge of every shadow. Every stick that burns is another bit of safety slipping away. You begin to tidy your space, pushing the mat into the corner, shaking out your tattered blanket, trying to banish the chaos. But filth is everywhere, on your clothes, under your nails, ground into your skin. You gave up on being clean a long time ago. Water is precious, and every drop must be boiled, and even then, it never feels quite safe. You know too much about what crawls in water, about what grows in darkness. You know that the line between health and death is as thin as the rim of your bowl. Someone coughs outside your lodge, a hacking, wet sound that lingers in the air. You recognize it. It is not the cough of someone who will get better. It is the cough of someone whose lungs are already half mud, half memory. You do not rush. You have learned that nothing is urgent in a world where everything is already lost. You run your fingers along your collection of medicines, your only treasures. There are roots, barks, powders, most of them more comfort than cure, but all hard won and carefully gathered. You think about the hours spent hunched over icy ground, digging for a single stubborn plant, about the cuts on your hands that never quite heal. You think about the risk of infection, the creeping numbness that comes from repeated exposure. Every healer you ever knew died young or old, but always sick. You sigh and rise, shaking out your aching legs, preparing to face the next need. Before you leave, you wrap your blanket tightly around your shoulders, pressing the scratchy, smoky fabric to your chin. It smells of nights spent watching over dying children, of the sweat of laboring women, of the blood and tears of a people forced into smaller and smaller spaces, surviving on less and less. You pause at the doorway, staring at the dull light leaking through the gaps in the walls. You wonder if today will be the day you finally do not have to get up, the day someone else will take your place, the day you can simply stay here, warm and useless, until the world forgets you. But you know that is just another fantasy, no more real than the memory of feasts. You step outside, bowl in hand, and pour the dregs of your meal onto the ground. The dogs come sniffing, fighting over the last drops, teeth bared and eyes wild. You watch them, envying their single minded hunger, their ability to fight for scraps without shame. You wonder what it would be like to be an animal, to be free of memory and guilt and the burden of expectation. But you are not an animal. You are the healer. You gather your medicines, your courage, and your threadbare dignity, and you walk into the heart of the camp, ready to face whatever suffering waits for you next. That is the only thing that matters, that you keep moving, keep tending, keep pretending that any of this makes a difference. There is no time to linger with your own discomfort. The world, as always, demands your attention, and your attention is a resource everyone spends freely, except you. You hardly finish pouring away your thin soup before a pair of young girls come stumbling over, their faces solemn, their eyes wide and careful. They do not speak, just nod toward a sagging form, half hidden by a pile of broken baskets and rotting furs. You know without looking that it is the old man, the one who has, for days now, shuffled around the camp on a stick, grumbling and spitting, and occasionally pretending not to notice his own failing leg. You drag your feet, but you follow, because this is what you do, because there is no one else. The girls wait at a distance while you crouch next to the old man. He looks up at you with a mixture of embarrassment and resentment, like he blames you personally for his condition. His leg is stretched out awkwardly, the wrappings already soaked through, dark with something you know will smell of rot before you even unwrap it. Hurts, he mutters, as if you could mistake pain for anything else. He is shivering, even though the day is only moderately cold. His breath comes in little gasps, the smell of old tobacco and lost hope. You do not waste time with empty words. You have seen wounds like this too often. You know exactly what you will find beneath the dirty bandage: flesh gone soft and gray around the edges, skin puckered and leaking, a stench so heavy it nearly makes you gag. You pull the wrapping loose, trying not to flinch, but you cannot help the tiny wrinkle in your nose as the smell hits you. Gangrene has set in. The flesh above the wound is hot, angry, the color of an ugly bruise. Below, it is already turning that sickly, mottled color that means the rest of the leg is already dying. You go through the motions. You fetch water that you boiled last night, a rare luxury, and pour it over the wound, washing away the worst of the filth. It is never enough. There is always more filth, more death hiding in the folds of flesh and the cracks of bone. The old man groans, clenching his fists, but you ignore him. He is not the first, and will not be the last, to cry under your hands. You grind some willow bark, painkiller, yes, but more importantly, a distraction. You pack the wound with moss, one of the only things you have in any abundance, and hope it will soak up the ooze. The infection is already moving up his leg, marching to the rhythm of his weak pulse. You want to say something comforting, but you have run out of lies. You have seen this too many times. You tie the wound loosely, knowing the bandage will be filthy again by morning. You tell him to keep the leg above his heart, to rest, to eat, though you both know rest is a cruel joke, and food is just a memory for most. You watch his eyes as you work. He knows, as you do, that he will not live to see the next thaw. You wonder if he is afraid, or if he is simply too tired to care. You do not ask. There are some things even a healer cannot heal. The two girls stand silent as you finish, waiting for you to say something. You nod at them. Keep him warm, you say, and keep the wound clean. Clean is another joke, another word that means nothing here, where filth seeps into every pore and every mouthful of air. The girls look at you as if you can make this not be true, but you cannot. You are a keeper of small comforts, not miracles. You rise, your knees aching, and catch the old man's eye one last time. You have seen that look before, the look that says, I know you cannot save me, but I wish you could. It is the look that haunts you in the quiet hours of the night, when you are alone with the sound of your own ragged breathing. You wish for a moment that you could be somewhere else, anywhere else, but the world is small and full of suffering, and you have nowhere to go. You stand there for a moment, feeling the weight of your own helplessness settle over you like a second skin. You think about all the healers who came before you, all the stories you were told as a child, stories of men and women who could speak to spirits, who could draw poison from wounds and bring the dying baker from the edge. You wonder if they were all liars, or if the world has simply become meaner, harder, less willing to be healed. You move on because you must. Someone calls your name from the other side of camp, a child's voice this time, high and insistent. There is always someone else, always another wound, another fever, another need. You press your hands together to stop them from shaking and tell yourself that this is just how life is. No one lives forever. Most do not even live long enough to see their hair go gray. You catch a glimpse of your own reflection in a shard of metal by the fire. You look old, older than you should. You see the lines etched deep around your eyes, the hollow cheeks, the mouth drawn tight with years of biting back words you cannot say. You wonder, not for the first time, how long you have left before someone must come to you and say, there is nothing more I can do. You shake the thought away, tucking your medicine bag under your arm and prepare yourself for the next task. You remind yourself that your job is not to cure, but to comfort, to ease the passage, to be a witness to the end. It is a dark calling, but it is yours. You think of the old man, his breathing rough, his leg already lost to rot, and you tell yourself that at least you gave him a little relief, a little dignity. It is not enough, and it never will be, but you do it anyway, because someone must. There is no rest. You have not yet finished with the old man and his rotting leg when another summons comes, sharper and more desperate this time. It is a woman's voice, strained with pain and fear, and you know instantly what awaits you. Birth, here, is never an occasion for joy. It is an act of grim determination, a wager with fate. It is a test, and the world rarely grades kindly. You wipe your hands on the least filthy bit of your tunic and follow the sound, weaving between huddled shapes and scattered bones, until you find the makeshift shelter that has been set aside for such occasions. Inside, the air is thick with sweat and dread, with the lingering tang of old blood and the sharp, sour stink of panic. Two older women hover over the laboring mother, whispering useless encouragement, their faces rigid with the memory of every birth that ended badly. The mother herself is barely more than a girl, her belly enormous, her eyes wild, her hair matted with the same filth that coats the floor. You kneel beside her, hands trembling slightly, and offer the comfort of ritual, a few whispered words, a quick brush of your hand across her forehead, a pinch of dried sage crushed between your fingers and held under her nose. You remember your own first birth, how you fumbled the tools, how your voice wavered, how you tried to look wise and strong when you felt only terror. Nothing has changed. You are still afraid. Only now, your hands move without needing to be told what to do. You boil water, though it will not be clean enough. You wash your hands in the smoke of burning herbs, because this is what you have, and because even the illusion of cleanliness is worth something. You prepare strips of old linen, already stiff with the stains of previous births and deaths, and you press them into service again, because there are never enough supplies and there is never enough time. The mother screams. It is a sound that cuts through at everything, a sound that makes the old women wince and look away. You murmur to her, telling her she is strong, she is brave, she has done this before in another life. You say what you must. Lies are the currency of survival. The baby does not come quickly. The hours drag, and every minute you watch the mother's face turn from fear to exhaustion, her lips peeling back in a rictus of pain. You check the progress, your fingers clumsy and cold, and you feel the baby's head, too high, too still. You know the signs. You know what it means when a labor stalls, when the cries grow weaker, when the old women begin to sing under their breath, voices shaking. You keep working anyway. You coax the mother to drink, to push, to breathe. You press her belly. You whisper prayers to indifferent spirits. You beg the world for a mercy it seldom gives. You remember every other birth you have seen, every mother who did not survive, every child who did not breathe. The memories press in on you, but you force yourself to focus, to be present, to pretend. When the child finally comes, it is with a rush of blood and fluid, more than there should be, and you know instantly it is bad. The baby is limp, skin dusky, and lips blue, the cord tangled tight around its neck. You work quickly because there is nothing else to do. You clear the mouth, you rub the tiny chest, you shake the child gently, begging for a cry, for a sign of life. Sometimes, rarely, so rarely, the world relents, and the child gasps, coughs, lives. Today, the world is as it always is. The silence stretches, heavy and final. The mother does not ask for her child. She is drifting, her face slack, her eyes rolling back. Blood pools beneath her, thick and dark, and you know what comes next. You shout for more hands, you press cloth to the wound, you beg her to stay, to breathe, to fight, but she is already somewhere else, slipping away with her child. The old women begin to wail, low and broken, a sound that crawls into your bones and settles there. You sit back on your heels, your own hands slick with blood, and let the exhaustion wash over you. There is nothing left to do but tidy the body, wrap the child, burn the soiled rags. You move mechanically, your mind retreating from the horror of it, because if you let yourself feel everything, you would break. You whisper apologies to no one, to the mother, to the child, to the world itself. Outside, the camp continues its business. Children run, dogs bark, someone sharpens a bone knife, oblivious or indifferent to the new deaths that have joined the old. You step out into the gray light, scrubbing your hands with snow and ash, your breath coming in ragged puffs. You wonder, not for the first time, how many more times you will have to do this, how many more mothers and children you will lose, how many more memories you can hold before they drown you. Someone calls your name. There is always another need. You answer, because that is your role. You are the healer, the witness, the one who stays behind to gather the pieces and pretend there is a future. You are tired, so tired, but there is no one else. You take a deep breath, taste the iron and the smoke and the hopelessness, and go on. You always go on. You do not have time to wash the blood from your hands before someone else is calling, breathless and urgent. It is a group of boys this time, voices tumbling over each other, panic in their faces, but excitement too. A fresh wound is an event in their dull world. He's bleeding, healer. Come quick, they shout, as if the world is not already overflowing with blood. You do not hurry, because you have learned there is rarely any need. Blood is a currency you handle daily. You know the exchange rate by heart. Still, you follow the boys to the edge of the camp, where a cluster of children huddles around one of their own, the chosen victim of the day's adventures. The boy sits in the dirt, hands pressed to his cheek, blood seeping between his fingers. You see the culprit, a half wild fox, cornered and desperate, now a limp red stain on the snow, its teeth bared in death. You kneel and gently move the boy's hands away. The wound is deep, an ugly slash from lip to jaw. You know it will scar if he survives at all. You see fear flicker in his eyes when he catches a glimpse of your face, your practiced neutrality, your unspoken calculation. Is this one worth saving, or just another name for the old women to wail over tomorrow? You work methodically, cleaning the cut with water so cold it makes him flinch and hiss. You have long since run out of clean cloth, so you use moss again, pressing it into the wound, whispering to him to be brave, to think of the great warriors, to hold still. You know that bravery is just another mask for fear. Infection is always the true enemy, patient and invisible, waiting in every speck of dirt, every unwashed hand. You reach for a handful of dried leaves, yarrow, what little you have left. You chew them, spitting the bitter wad into your palm and pressing it to the gash, a poultice older than memory and only slightly more effective than prayer. You have seen wounds like this rot from the inside, flesh swelling and blackening, the child lost to fever and delirium before anyone can even bury him properly. You tell yourself, as you always do, that this time will be different, that your hands will be enough. You know it is a lie, but you say it anyway. The boy's mother arrives, face ashen, eyes darting between you and her son, searching for a promise you cannot give. You tell her how to change the poultice, how to keep the wound clean, how to watch for the red streaks that will mean the end is near. You repeat these instructions as if they will make a difference, as if cleanliness and care are even possible here, where the world itself seems built to destroy the weak. You send the boy home, his cheek bandaged, his mother clinging to him as if she can protect him from everything you cannot. The other children scatter, their curiosity sated for the moment, leaving only a trail of muddy footprints and half remembered warnings. Stay away from the wild things, as if that will save them. You sit back on your heels and feel the exhaustion settle deeper into your bones. It is not the wound that worries you, it is what comes after, the silent invasion of sickness, the fever that burns hotter than any fire, the sudden, wrenching decline that no amount of knowledge or effort can reverse. You have seen it too often. You have watched hope die in mothers' eyes, watched children fade from laughter to silence in a matter of days. You wonder sometimes what it would be like to live in a world where a cut on the cheek is just a cut, not a death sentence. You wonder what it would be like to believe that a healer's hands are enough, that your knowledge is more than a litany of small, inevitable failures. You think about all the things you cannot see: bacteria, spirits, bad air, whatever it is that kills so quietly, so thoroughly you curse them all, though it changes nothing. You go back to your shelter, washing your hands in cold water, watching the blood swirl away in pale red ribbons. The water bites at your skin, raw and cracked from too many scrubbings, but you persist. You have to believe that each ritual, each gesture, holds back the darkness for a moment longer. It is a small act of defiance, and it is all you have. You look at your dwindling supplies and know that the next wound, the next fever, will demand more than you can give. You have sent runners to gather more herbs, but they return empty handed, the earth still frozen, the plants dormant and unyielding. The world is stingy with its gifts and generous with its cruelties. The sun is already low when you finish cleaning up, your hands stiff and numb, your stomach churning with hunger and dread. You know that tonight you will lie awake, listening for the sound of a mother's cry, the first sign that the boy's wound has turned. You know that if he dies, it will not be your fault, but it will still be your responsibility. The tribe will mourn, then forget, then carry on. You will remember. You always do. A group of women passes by, carrying firewood, their faces closed and weary. You nod to them, and they nod back, a silent exchange of understanding. You are all doing what you can to keep the world from collapsing. It is not enough, but it is what you have. As night falls, you wrap yourself in your tattered blanket, feeling every ache and pain, every bruise and scrape, every loss you have witnessed. You close your eyes and try to remember a time when life felt less precarious, less grim, but memory fails you, as it always does. All you can do is wait for the next call, the next wound, the next small, desperate hope. This is your life. You patch and mend and comfort. You watch and wait and grieve, and you wonder how much longer you can endure. But you will endure because there is no other choice. The world is full of wounds, and someone has to tend them, even if there is no real healing to be found. Evening is the only promise of respite you have, and like all promises in your world, it is a thin and brittle thing. The sun sinks behind the endless march of trees, turning the camp to a huddle of shivering shadows and flickering fires. Your stomach aches with hunger, but what weighs more is the knowledge that your pouch is nearly empty, your stores of roots and moss and bark dwindling. Each day you use a little more and gather a little less, and every step you take in the hunt for medicine is a step deeper into defeat. You take up your digging stick and your worn leather pouch, the tools of your trade, and the proof of your ongoing struggle. There is no one to go with you. Everyone else is busy with their own desperation, mending torn clothing, feeding children scraps, watching the horizon for smoke or strangers. No one envies your work. No one offers to share the burden. The cold bites at your cheeks and seeps into your boots, stiffening your toes before you have even left the glow of the campfires. You walk away from the warmth and noise, moving toward the tangled margins where the wild still grows. Under your breath, you mutter the names of the things you hope to find: yarrow, willow, plantain, a patch of red twig dogwood if luck has not fled entirely. Most of the plants sleep under the crust of late snow and dead leaves, clinging to life as stubbornly as you do. You kneel, knuckles numb, and push aside the brown detritus with your stick, searching for a hint of green or a glimpse of a root fat enough to save. Your fingers sting and crack, but you press on. Sometimes you wonder why you bother. The medicine is rarely enough. For every fever soothed or wound bound, there are three you cannot save. The earth seems to mock you, refusing to yield anything but the smallest, meanest of offerings. A shriveled root here, a broken sprig there. You imagine the spirits of the plants whispering that your work is useless, that you are only stalling the inevitable. You ignore them, the way you ignore so much these days. You move slowly, careful not to waste what little strength you have. The air is thick with the smell of thawing earth, damp and rich, and somehow menacing, as if everything around you is slowly decaying into the ground. You find a cluster of old nettles, their stems brittle, but their roots still alive. You dig with numb hands, fingers raw against the stones and frozen mud. Every handful you pry loose feels like a minor victory, though you know it will barely fill a cup. You whisper thanks anyway, because the world loves gratitude even when it gives nothing in return. As you work, the camp recedes into darkness behind you. The sounds of life, laughter, crying, argument, fade until you are alone with the scraping of your stick and the distant calls of night birds. You think about the times, long ago, when gathering medicine was a communal act, a ritual shared by the old and the young, a kind of game against the meanness of the world. Now it is just another solitary chore, another weight to bear. You check your pouch, disappointed by how little it holds. A handful of nettle roots, some stubborn dandelion leaves, a piece of willow bark barely thicker than your finger. You know it will not be enough for the days ahead, but it will have to do. You do not let yourself hope for more. Hope, you have learned, is just another way to be disappointed. You rise, brushing the dirt from your knees, and make your way back through the trees, following the orange glow of campfires and the faint sound of singing, someone clinging to tradition, or maybe just a distraction. On the path back, you find the broken carcass of a squirrel, already half claimed by insects and the sharp beaks of birds. You take the time to cut a strip of sinew from its leg, tucking it away for sewing wounds or mending shoes. Nothing is wasted, not here. By the time you return to camp, true night has fallen, and the air is even colder. The fires are ringed by people huddled close together, the warmth of bodies more precious than any blanket. You nod to those who look your way, offering no words, and they nod back, equally silent. Everyone is tired, everyone is hungry, everyone is haunted by the same fear that tomorrow will be just a little worse than today. Inside your shelter, you lay out your meager finds, arranging them in neat rows as if order could make them multiply. You crush some of the nettle and chew on the bitter leaves, hoping they will quiet your aching stomach. The flavor is sharp, unpleasant, but you swallow it anyway. You mark the rest for the next round of illness, knowing they will not last. You sit for a while in the darkness, your hands stained with dirt, your back hunched in exhaustion. You think about what you would do if you had more, if you could treat wounds before they turned, if you could banish fevers, if you could save the mothers and the babies and the old men with dying legs. But the world does not deal in ifs. It deals in loss and want and compromise. A gust of wind rattles the walls of your shelter. You shiver and draw your blanket closer. Outside, you hear the laughter of children playing in the dark, untroubled by the day's disappointments, their voices shrill and fearless. You know their time is brief. You envy them their ignorance. You close your eyes, trying to remember a prayer that does not taste of desperation. You fail. There is only the knowledge that come morning you will do it all again. Walk out into the cold, dig for scraps, hope for enough, and pretend you are not already beaten. You wonder how many more nights you can keep going. But for now, you sit in the dark and let the silence settle over you. It is the only thing the world gives freely. When you make your way back into the camp, darkness is settled deep and final over everything. The cold is thicker now. You can feel it in your lungs, gnawing at your bones, as if the night itself means to hollow you out from the inside. There is comfort in the flickering circles of firelight and the low drone of voices, but it is a thin comfort, stretched to breaking. Even the children's laughter, distant now, sounds fragile, as if a single wrong word might shatter it. You head toward your shelter, but you do not make it far before you are intercepted. A pair of hunters, fresh from whatever misfortune the forest held for them, stand in your path. One drags his foot behind him, limping in a way you have seen 1,000 times before, a twisted ankle or maybe a sprained knee, neither of which you have the means to fix, only to slow the unraveling. The other looks miserable in a different way, clutching his jaw and mumbling complaints about a tooth that has been hurting for days. You want to tell him that pain is the most loyal companion he will ever have, but you know he is not looking for wisdom. No one ever is. You force a smile, or at least an imitation of one, and gesture for the limping man to sit. You kneel beside him, examining his swollen ankle in the firelight. The skin is puffy, turning an ugly purple. You press and prod, watching him wince, and give your verdict. Rest. Ice if you can find it. Keep the weight off. You know he will do none of this. He has mouths to feed, and the hunt does not wait for a healer's advice. You reach for your ever dwindling pouch of dried willow bark, breaking off a small piece for him to chew. Pain relief, nothing more, and even that is just a pause, not a cure. He thanks you, his eyes already sliding away, looking for a way back to his old rhythms. He will be back tomorrow or the day after with the same pain or worse. The other man thrusts his face toward you, mouth open, eyes desperate. You peer inside by firelight, seeing the swollen gum, the rotten tooth, the angry red of infection creeping along the jaw. You know the truth of it. He will lose the tooth, and maybe the next, and maybe his life if the rot keeps spreading. You do not have the luxury of clean tools or strong drink to dull the agony, but you offer what you can. A handful of chewed yarrow, a mumbled incantation, a suggestion to avoid cold food, and above all, to pray the spirits are feeling generous. The man nods, disappointment and relief fighting for space on his face. Your work, you have long realized, is not so much in healing as in listening. They come to you with wounds and aches and misery, but mostly they come to have someone notice their pain, to say it matters, to pretend that some order can be restored to a world that grinds away at them day by day. You listen to their stories, their complaints, their superstitions. Sometimes you invent new superstitions just to keep them talking, because the alternative is silence, and silence is where despair grows. Tonight is no different. You listen as the limping man grumbles about a rival tribe seen near the hunting grounds, as the other curses the foxes that steal what little meat they manage to catch. You nod at the right moments, murmuring your agreement, offering advice that you know they will ignore. It is a dance you have done so many times that you barely think about the steps. Around you, the camp is alive in its own subdued way. Old women mutter prayers and gossip over, over pots of soup that never seem to fill. Children dart between shadows, chasing each other with sticks, pretending to be wolves or warriors, anything other than what they are. The men huddle close to the fires, eyes narrowed against the dark, sharpening bone knives, and trading stories of the hunt, most of which end in disappointment. Every face is tired, drawn thin by hunger and fear and cold. You want to retreat into your shelter, to curl up under your threadbare blanket and close your eyes, but there is always one more complaint, one more ache, one more sorrow that demands your attention. You are the healer, yes, but more and more, you are a priest of lost causes, a keeper of secrets, a confidant to men and women who have nowhere else to turn. It is not the job you wanted, but it is the only one left. Someone brings you a cracked bone to splint a finger. Someone else wants a charm against bad dreams. A child asks you why her brother coughs so much at night. You answer them all, your voice flat and weary, giving what little comfort you can. You feel the drain, the way each question carves away another piece of you until you are little more than a hollow vessel filled with other people's pain. You finally manage to slip away, your arms heavy, your mind numb. You crouch by your fire, staring into the glowing coals, watching sparks rise and vanish in the night air. You think about all the advice you have given, all the wounds you have bandaged, all the aches you have soothed, and you wonder if any of it makes a difference. The pain never really goes away. The hunger never truly leaves. The darkness is never fully chased off by the fire. You lie down at last, pulling your blanket over you, feeling every bruise and ache in your own body. You know you will dream tonight of wounds you cannot heal, of people you cannot save, of a world that offers nothing but more of the same. Still, you are here, you endure. Tomorrow, you will rise and do it all again, because you are the healer, and the healer's work is never finished. You close your eyes and listen to the camp breathe around you, a chorus of coughs and whispers, laughter and sobs, hope and resignation tangled together in the darkness. You let yourself drift, not toward sleep, but toward a kind of forgetting, a pause in the endless labor of living. In the morning, you know, the cold and the pain and the needs will begin anew. But for now, you lie still and try to remember how to feel nothing at all. The camp is never truly silent, but sometimes, when the wind drops and the embers fade, there is a kind of hush that settles over the lodges, a truce between the living and the darkness. You let yourself believe for the briefest moment that the world is resting, but you are not allowed rest, not truly. Just as you settle your aching body onto your mat and wrap yourself in your ragged blanket, a shadow darkens your doorway. You hear your name spoken softly, but with the edge of authority that brooks no refusal. It is one of the chief's sons, face set in a way that tells you there will be no arguing. You pull yourself upright, gathering your pouch and what little patience you have left, and follow him across the camp. The night is colder than before, and the fires are mostly just smears of red in the gloom, watched over by hunched figures clutching blankets. The chief's lodge is larger than most, though no warmer or cleaner. Inside, it smells of sweat, wood smoke, and something sour beneath, a scent you have come to associate with power that cannot escape its own body. The chief is propped up on a pile of furs, his eyes half closed, a muscle in his jaw working as if he is chewing over the bitterness of life itself. He is a big man, once broad and proud, but now shrinking, whittled down by too many seasons of famine and too many nights spent worrying about all the things he cannot control. When he sees you, he tries to smile, but even that seems like an effort too great for him. "It is my head," he says, as if you do not already know. The pounding will not stop. You nod, sitting beside him, laying out your tools with the practiced motions of a healer who knows that the work is half theater. You fetch your small pouch of dried tobacco, a relic you guard jealously, and begin to crush it between your fingers. Tobacco is a luxury now, not a medicine, but you have learned that sometimes the ritual is more important than the cure. You ask him about the pain, where it lives, how it feels, what makes it worse. He grunts, frustrated by the questions, and finally mutters that it is worse when he thinks. You almost laugh, but do not. Power comes with its own humiliations, and you know better than to add to them. You pack the crushed tobacco into a small bowl, light it, and hold it under his nose, the smoke curling in lazy spirals. He inhales, grimacing, and you see the tension in his shoulders relax just a little. You fetch a scrap of animal hide, roll it up, and tuck it under his neck, lifting his head off the hard ground. You murmur words that are mostly for show, songs you half remember from your own teacher, prayers for clear thought, for strong dreams, for the kind of wisdom that might just once come with a little comfort. The chief's wives linger at the edges of the lodge, their faces tight with worry and something else, resentment maybe, at the man who claims to rule them yet cannot even banish his own headaches. They watch you with hope and suspicion, as if waiting to see whether you will fail him, as so many have before. You ignore them, focusing on the old man before you, watching his breath slow, his eyelids droop. When he speaks again, his voice is softer. He tells you about the dreams that haunt him: wolves in the woods, white men with fire sticks, children vanishing in the snow. He talks about hunger, about the dead whose names he still remembers, about the endless negotiations with neighboring tribes who smell weakness on the wind. You listen because that, in the end, is your true role, not the mixing of herbs, not the bandaging of wounds, but the keeping of confidences, the absorbing of fears that no one else is allowed to hear. You nod and murmur assent as he talks, never interrupting, letting his words spill out and pool on the floor between you. You wonder how much his pain is in his body and how much is in his mind. You wonder whether it matters. When he is finally quiet, you place a hand on his shoulder, heavy and solid. Rest, you say, and let the spirits take your pain for a while. It is an empty promise, and you both know it, but he closes his eyes and leans back, surrendering to the illusion. His wives exchange glances. One mutters something under her breath, but you do not catch it. You pack away your tools, tucking the tobacco back into your pouch with a care that feels almost reverent. You look at the chief, his face slack in sleep or something like it, and you feel a twinge of something that might be pity or might be envy. Even the most powerful men are helpless in the face of pain. You know that better than anyone. You step outside into the cold, the sky thick with clouds, the world washed in shadow. The camp is quiet again, or as quiet as it ever gets. You make your way back to your own shelter, the night pressing in on all sides. You feel the exhaustion in your bones, heavier now for having carried someone else's suffering on your shoulders. Before you sleep, you stare into the dying fire, letting the embers hypnotize you. You wonder what it would be like to have someone sit by your bed, to listen to your fears, to take your pain away for a while. You know it will not happen. You are the healer. The healer's suffering is invisible, unspoken, a secret buried beneath everyone else's needs. You crawl back onto your mat, pulling your blanket tight. The ache in your own head is dull, but constant, like the echo of the chief's pain. You close your eyes, listening to the wind outside, and drift somewhere between sleep and waking, the line between your own troubles and everyone else's long since blurred. When you dream of silence, a world where no one calls your name in the night, where every pain is bearable, where even the chief can sleep undisturbed. But it is just a dream. In the morning, you will wake, and the work will begin again. Night does not bring you peace, only a different flavor of exhaustion. As the fire dwindles to its last red coals and the camp slips into uneasy quiet, you finally stretch out under your ragged blanket, curled tight against the cold that seeps up through the ground and down from the roof. For a moment, you let yourself believe that rest is possible. You close your eyes, and the darkness behind your lids is deeper than the night outside. But sleep is a luxury for someone else, somewhere else. Here, it is only a temporary forgetting, an escape measured in shallow breaths and restless limbs. Your body aches in places you have forgotten how to name: your back, your hands, the soft part beneath your ribs, where dread pools every evening. You listen to the sounds of the camp, the distant cough of a sick child, the brittle crack of frost on the shelter walls, the quiet murmur of two women sharing the last of their secrets before dawn. Every sound carries with it a story, another reminder that nothing in this world stays buried for long. You try to remember the last time you woke refreshed, with no one calling your name in the gray hours before sunrise, no crisis waiting by your door. You cannot. You realize, not for the first time, that your own dreams have grown thin and brittle, worn away by the constant press of other people's needs. When you do manage to slip under the surface of sleep, you do not find rest, you find memories. Tonight you dream of faces, so many faces. The old man with the rotten leg, his eyes glassy and unfocused as you changed his bandages. The mother whose baby you could not save, her hair tangled around her face as she sobbed into her empty arms. Children, their mouths open in silent cries, their bodies shivering with fever or hunger or both. You see them all, one after another, lined up in the darkness of your mind, waiting for you to make them whole. You reach for them, but your hands pass through like smoke. You jolt awake, heart pounding, sweat clammy on your skin, despite the cold. For a moment, you do not know where you are, if you are still dreaming, or if this is the waking nightmare of your life. Your shelter is quiet, except for your own labored breathing and the faint crackle of the dying fire. Outside, someone is crying softly, muffled and desperate, and you feel the urge to get up, to go to them, to offer what little comfort you can. But you do not move. You cannot. Your body has finally rebelled, pinning you down with fatigue heavier than any sickness. You lie there, staring at the dim outline of the shelter's walls, tracing the shapes the moon carves through gaps in the bark. You count each breath, a ritual to remind yourself you are still alive. You do not know if this is a comfort or a curse. You listen for your name, half expecting it to come at any moment, to be summoned back into the endless cycle of need and not enough. Instead, your mind drifts, wandering the boundaries of memory and regret. You recall the elders who taught you, their hands steady and sure, their voices full of stories you did not understand at the time. You remember how you envied them, how you believed they held some secret that made the work bearable. Now you know better. There are no secrets, only endurance. You try to recall a moment of true happiness, but all you find are fragments. The taste of fresh berries before a long summer, the sound of laughter echoing off the water, the rare day when no one needed you and you could be just another voice in this crowd. These memories feel distant, as if they belong to someone else, another healer in another world. You roll over, trying to escape the weight of your own thoughts, but the blanket does nothing to keep the cold or the sorrow out. You wonder how many nights you have lain like this, grieving for those you could not save, dreading the new demands the next day will bring. You have lost count. You no longer keep track of failures. There are too many. Each death is another stone in the river that pulls you under. Outside, a dog barks, sharp and startled, and the camp stirs. Someone coughs again, and a baby begins to wail. Your body twitches in response, years of habit driving you to rise, to answer, to fix what cannot be fixed. But this time, you stay down, your muscles refusing the command. You tell yourself it is just for a moment, just until you catch your breath. You think of the sun, still hours from rising, and feel a flash of anger at the world, at your own helplessness, at the endlessness of it all. You want to scream, to tell everyone that you are finished, that you have nothing left to give, but you do not. You swallow the anger, as you always do, and let it settle deep in your gut, where it will smolder until it is needed again. You close your eyes and try to slip back into sleep, hoping for oblivion, for silence, for a world where grief is not your only inheritance. You do not find it. Instead, you wait for the next call, the next disaster, the next small sorrow that will remind you of your place in this world. And so the night passes in fits and starts, in dreams that are not restful, and in waking that is not truly living. You do not remember falling asleep. You only know that when morning comes, you will rise again, because that is what you do. That is all there is. The morning comes not with the gentle promise of a new beginning, but with the sharp, sour smell of illness. You are awake before the sun, your body already braced for bad news, your mind dull with the remnants of another night's unrest. You hear voices outside, urgent, worried, the cadence of mothers who know something is wrong and are too tired to be surprised by it. You do not bother to stretch or wash your face. There is no point in pretending the day will be anything but hard. As you step outside, the cold bites deep, as if it means to punish you for the sins of the night before. The camp is shrouded in a gray half-light, the fire pits no more than smudges of smoke against the sky. The children are clustered near one of the larger shelters, their faces drawn and anxious. Their mothers stand behind them, eyes ringed with worry and sleep deprivation, hands resting on their little ones' shoulders, as if to keep them anchored to this world by touch alone. One mother calls you over. You do not need to ask what is wrong. You can see it in the way the children huddle, their bodies folded over, their faces flushed and slick with sweat. One girl, her hair matted, her lips cracked, looks up at you with fever-bright eyes. Her belly cramps and gurgles, and when she coughs, it is a wet, heavy sound. You recognize the enemy at once. Another wave of sickness, the kind that stalks camps like a wolf, picking off the weakest and the youngest. They tell you that the children cannot keep food down, that the night was full of vomiting and cries for water. You kneel, touching foreheads, feeling pulses, noting the sour tang of their breath. You know the cause, and it is as old as hunger itself, bad water. You can smell it in the air, the staleness, the hint of rot that seeps into every crack and vessel when the river runs low and the people are forced to drink whatever will not freeze their mouths shut. You try to explain, again, the importance of boiling water. You say the words you have said so many times that they feel like a chant. The fire must burn until the bubbles rise. Only then is it safe. The mothers nod, but their faces are full of doubt. There is never enough wood, never enough time. They do what they can, but the world is always ahead of them, always ready with another trick, another misery. You set to work, mixing what little you have left, roots to settle the stomach, bitter leaves to slow the fever, dried berries to coax a little sweetness back into their mouths. You offer reassurance you do not feel. Most will recover. Just keep them warm. Keep giving water. Keep praying. You know that these are just words. You know the look in a mother's eyes when she is waiting for a miracle you cannot provide. As you move from child to child, you keep a count in your head. 4 children are already badly off, and at least 3 more have begun to show symptoms. The numbers are never good, and you can see where this is going. A handful will survive, a handful will not, and the rest will hover on the edge for days, neither well nor truly ill, caught in the gray zone between hope and resignation. By midday, your own strength is flagging. The air in the shelter is thick and heavy, damp with sweat and sick breath. You step outside for a moment, gulping in the frigid air, trying not to let the mothers see the shake in your hands. You wonder, not for the first time, if the world is punishing you for something you cannot remember. You wonder if there is a sin in trying and failing, or if that is just life. A few of the older children look at you with suspicion, as if you carry the sickness with you. You do, in a way, on your clothes, in your hair, under your fingernails, no matter how often you try to wash them. Filth is the one thing the world gives you in abundance, and you cannot seem to scrub it off. Even the word clean has lost its meaning. Everything is dirty: food, water, hands, hope. You ask one of the men to fetch more wood, but you know what he will find: stumps and branches picked over by hungry fires, the ground bare and frozen, the trees stubbornly holding on to what little they have left. The world is shrinking, and you can feel it pressing in on you, tighter and tighter with each passing day. In the afternoon, you sit by the fire, stirring a pot of bitter-smelling tea, your hands wrapped in rags to keep the skin from splitting. You watch the smoke rise, thinking of all the times you have done this before, all the times it has failed to make a difference. You remember the stories the old ones used to tell of times when the rivers ran clear, when the land was generous, when a healer's hands were enough. You wonder if they were lying, or if the world really has grown meaner. A mother comes to you, her face set and angry. She wants answers. She wants blame. She wants a promise that her child will live. You have none of these to give. You can only offer another cup of tea, another rag soaked in cool water, another empty reassurance. She takes it all, hands trembling, and returns to her vigil. As evening falls, you check the children one more time. A few are worse. One boy lies limp, his breath slow and shallow. You stroke his hair, whisper a song that was once meant to comfort, and feel nothing but the weight of defeat. The mothers look to you for a sign, but you have none. You gather your things, promising to return soon, and retreat into the cold, your chest tight and your mind blank. You find a quiet spot by the dying fire and sit, staring into the embers, your hands empty. You have nothing left to offer but your presence, your witness, your silence. The night closes in, and you brace yourself for another round, another child, another fever, another fight you cannot win. You tell yourself you will try again tomorrow. There is nothing else to do. By midday, the air inside the shelter is so thick you can hardly breathe. The smoke from the fire seeps into your clothes, clings to your hair, invades your lungs. You step out to draw a cold breath, blinking against the thin sunlight, just in time to see two men staggering toward you across the muddy ground. They are both spattered with old blood and new mud, their faces drawn tight with pain and fear. One of them clutches his shoulder, jaw clenched, teeth bared in a grimace that is half agony, half pride. The other, younger, props him up, eyes wide and uncertain. He was shot, the younger one blurts, as if there were anything unusual about it. Hunting went bad. It's still in there, healer, the arrow. You want to sigh. Instead, you motion them to follow you inside, where the fire's thin warmth offers little comfort. The injured man sits heavily, breath coming in short, ragged bursts. His skin is pale, already slick with sweat. You know that look. Shock is setting in, and infection will not be far behind. You brace yourself. You gather your tools, a knife chipped from flint, a bone awl, a few precious strips of sinew, and the last of your boiled water. You have done this before, too many times, and each time the steps are the same. Hurry, hope, endure, and pray that you do not make it worse. The wound is ugly, a bloody mess at the back of his shoulder, the arrowhead buried deep. You tell him to bite down on a stick. You do not offer false comfort. As you work, the hut fills with the stink of blood and sweat, of burnt bone and panic. You dig for the arrowhead, feeling the resistance, the grating scrape as you finally work it free. The man grunts and curses, tries to twist away, but you hold him steady. Blood pours down his back, soaking your hands. You pour the precious water over the wound, watching it swirl pink and thin onto the earth floor. It is never enough water. There is never enough of anything. You pack the wound with moss and a scrap of dried yarrow, tying it off as best you can. You know you should burn the wound, sear it closed, but you have nothing left to do it with. You mutter an old prayer for strength, your voice hoarse, your hands shaking with fatigue and dread. The man sags against the wall, breathing hard. You look at his face and see the tremor of fear in his eyes. He knows, as you do, that the real danger is only just beginning. If the wound festers, if fever takes hold, there will be nothing you can do but watch him die by slow degrees. You give him a piece of willow bark to chew and tell him to rest, to stay warm, to eat if he can. You catch yourself repeating the same old instructions, words that mean less and less every time you say them. Rest, drink water, do not move the arm, keep the wound clean. As if any of that is possible, as if he has the luxury to do anything except survive. His companion asks if he will live, and you do not answer. Instead, you clean your hands as best you can and step outside, leaving the two men to their worry. You stare at your hands, at the red and brown stains under your fingernails, and feel a sudden surge of anger at the wound, at the world, at the endless, grinding need. You want to scream at the sky, to demand to know how many more you will lose, how many more lives will slip through your fingers while you stand by, powerless. You do not scream. You swallow it down, let it settle in your belly with all the other failures, and turn back to your work. There are more sick children to check, more teas to brew, more hopeless mothers to console. The world does not care about your anger, your fatigue, your growing sense of futility. Later, you check on the wounded man. He is feverish, shivering under a mound of ragged blankets, his breath coming fast. His companion wipes sweat from his brow, whispering encouragements that are meant as much for himself as for the injured man. You replace the moss, watching the wound for signs of spreading red, for the sickly sweet smell that means infection has taken root. You see the look in the man's eyes, fear, resignation, the knowledge that he is at the mercy of things too small to see, too stubborn to stop. You sit with him a while, listening to his rambling stories, half coherent memories of hunts gone wrong, of nights spent around the fire, of brothers lost and enemies killed. You nod, though you have heard them all before. You know that the stories are not for you, they are for him, a one to keep the darkness at bay, to pretend for a while that he is more than a body in pain. Outside, the sky is already growing dark again. You watch the sun slip behind the trees. Another day wasted, another day survived. You wonder, as you always do, if tomorrow will bring relief or only more of the same. You know the answer as night falls. You check the wounded man one last time. He is sleeping, if you can call it that, twitching and mumbling, his face slick with sweat. You touch his forehead, feel the heat burning there, and know what is coming. You do not say goodbye. You have learned not to waste words on what cannot be changed. You step out into the cold, your shoulders heavy with failure and fatigue, and look up at the indifferent stars. You know they will still be there long after you are gone, after all the wounded and the sick have faded into the earth. You wonder if anyone will remember the healer who tried and failed over and over to hold back the tide. You doubt it. There is a strange kind of comfort in routine, even when the routine is misery. As night presses in and the wind shakes your shelter's brittle walls, you retreat to your own private ritual. It is not the kind of thing anyone would envy. You do not pray or sing or offer your exhaustion to the spirits. No, you sit by the last of the fire's glow, back hunched, and unroll your most secret possession, a battered piece of old bark and a length of flattened bone, stained and smoothed by use. You keep a record, though you could not say why anymore. Perhaps it is the only thing that separates you from the darkness. Some proof that you lived and noticed, that each day was not only lost to the hunger and noise of others. On the bark, you carve the names of the sick, the dead, the ones who surprised you by surviving. You mark the days with notches and crude symbols a code only you can read. Sometimes, in the quiet, you read it over, a litany of defeat and rare, unexpected reprieves. Tonight you write arrow wound, fever by night, willow bark, moss, boiled water, waiting. There is a space for outcome, but you leave it blank. You do not tempt fate. You have learned that the world prefers to write its endings in its own time. Your fingers shake as you carve, not from cold alone, but from the weight of memory. Each mark is a wound you cannot heal, a scar you must bear. You remember faces that no one else recalls. The woman with the soft singing voice who died one bitter spring. The boy who brought you a bird's egg as a gift just days before his own fever carried him away. Sometimes you wonder if you write things down only to remember or to forget. The line between those two is thin, and you have walked it for too long. You try to be honest in your records, though honesty is a cruel companion. You write of failures, of mistakes, of the moments you hesitated and wondered if it might have made a difference. You do not embellish, do not excuse yourself, though sometimes you are tempted. You know that no one will ever read these marks except you. Maybe that is for the best. The bark is blotched with old blood, stained where your hands trembled, where ink or sap was not enough to hide the color of loss. Sometimes you catch yourself traying these stains with your thumb, as if you could scrub away the guilt along with the memory. But it lingers, always. You used to write in the hope that someone, someday, might learn from what you did wrong. Now you write to keep from losing your mind, to keep your grief from spilling over into the waking world. It is the only way you know to measure time, to draw a thin line of reason through the madness of each day. You write, too, of things that cannot be said aloud, of the way the camp smells in the deep winter, smoke and rot and old sorrow, of the way the mothers look at you when you tell them their children will not last the week, of the dreams that wake you at night, full of hands you cannot hold, voices you cannot answer. You write of your own body, too, the small betrayals that mount with each passing year, the ache in your knees, the dull throb in your jaw, where a tooth rotted out last summer, the way your breath sometimes catches for no reason you can name. You record these not as complaints, but as facts. Another piece of evidence for a trial no one will ever hold. There are nights when you consider burning the record, watching the symbols curl into nothing in the flames. What good are they, after all? What comfort do they give? But you cannot bring yourself to do it. The record is your one act of rebellion, your proof that you are more than just a pair of tired hands and an empty smile. When the fire finally dies, you roll up the bark, wrap it in old hide, and hide it beneath your bedding, away from curious eyes. No one asks what you do at night. No one wants to know. Your business is your own, a little island of privacy in a world that demands every other piece of you. You lie down, listening to the breathing of the camp, slow, ragged, 100 separate stories grinding on through the darkness. You know that your record will not save anyone, will not bring the dead back or keep the living from dying. But still, you keep it. Still, you write. Maybe you think this is the true work of the healer, not to cure, not to comfort, but to remember, to carry the stories forward so that nothing, not even suffering, is entirely lost. It is a small hope and a heavy one, but it is yours. As sleep steals up on you, you whisper the names you wrote that day, letting them echo in the darkness. A fragile promise that someone noticed, someone cared, someone endured. You do not expect peace, but sometimes, in the space between one breath and the next, you feel something close to it. Tomorrow, you will wake to new names, new wounds, new griefs. But tonight, for a little while, you let the burden rest. You are the healer, you remember, and you survive. Evening does not bring rest. The smoke in your shelter has grown so thick that your eyes sting, but you stay close to the fire anyway, hunched and waiting, listening for the next summons. You do not wait long. There are footsteps outside, slow, heavy, and unhurried in a way that tells you the bearer already knows the outcome. The voice that calls your name is cracked and raw, carrying a simple message. She is going. You know exactly who they mean. The old woman, the one you have patched and coaxed along for seasons now, has reached the end of the road. You gather your things without hurry. The tools for this work are the simplest: a bone rattle, a pouch of sacred dust, the last of your dried sage. You do not bother with medicines. They are past usefulness now. There is no healing left to offer, only a final measure of comfort, if such a thing even exists. The old woman lies in a pile of furs, her body small and sharp edged, as if life has already carved away all that is not bone or memory. Her eyes are closed, her breathing shallow and ragged, each inhale a battle, each exhale a surrender. Around her, her daughters and granddaughters have gathered, their faces carved from the same wood, grim, resigned, eyes already shining with tears that have nowhere else to go. No one speaks your name when you enter, but all eyes turn to you, waiting for the ritual that is expected, demanded, resented. You kneel by her side, placing the bone rattle on her chest so she will feel the vibration in her bones. It is a ritual older than memory, one you learned by heart from someone long dead. You light the sage, waving the smoke around her head, letting the scent fill the space, mingling with the smells of sickness and decay. You murmur the words you have said so many times, words that mean everything and nothing. Go softly. The path is clear. There is peace on the other side. The family begins to sing, voices trembling but persistent, an old song that once promised safe passage to the next world. You join in, not because you believe, but because belief is a habit that holds the world together when nothing else will. The old woman stirs, lips moving in time with the song. For a moment, you see a flicker of life, a memory of who she once was: a child, a mother, a keeper of stories, now reduced to a name that will soon be added to your record. You sprinkle the sacred dust onto the fire, watching the sparks jump and swirl. The ritual is meant to ease her journey, to guide her spirit, to assure the family that nothing truly ends. You know the truth: what ends is the pain, the hunger, the endless cold. What remains is absence, a gap in the world that cannot be filled, no matter how many songs you sing or prayers you offer. When her breath finally stops, it is almost a relief. The women weep, holding each other, their grief a quiet flood that fills the shelter. You sit back on your heels, feeling the weight of another passing settle onto your shoulders. You have done what was expected, performed the ritual, held the space. It is not enough, but it is all there is. You watch as the family tends to her body, cleaning her face, braiding her hair, wrapping her in a new blanket, one of the last, you suspect, not already patched and threadbare. They move with practiced hands, their movements automatic, rehearsed by necessity. Death is no stranger here. It is a regular visitor, a teacher with a curriculum no one wants to learn. You gather your things and stand, offering a few more words, not of comfort, there is none, but of acknowledgement. She was strong, she is remembered. The words are true and also a lie. Strength means nothing in the face of time and hunger. Remembrance is a thin thread, easily snapped. Outside, the world is unchanged. The same bitter wind, the same hunched figures around the fires, the same smoke curling into the endless sky. You feel hollowed out, emptied by the day's work, but there is no time for reflection. Already someone else is calling you, a mother whose child's cough has grown worse. There is no rest, no pause, no chance to mourn. You think about the old woman as you walk back to your shelter, her face already fading from memory, replaced by new faces, new needs. You add her name to your record, another line among hundreds. The act feels both sacred and pointless. You wonder if someday someone will do the same for you, or if your own passing will go unnoticed. Another silence in a world of noise. That night, you lie awake, staring at the darkness, listening to the family's quiet grief echo through the camp. You wonder if you will ever be able to sing the songs without your voice shaking, if the rituals will ever feel like more than a desperate attempt to hold back the void. You doubt it. Still, you do what you must. The world is relentless, and you are its servant. Tomorrow, there will be another death, another ritual, another act of witness. You are the healer. You watch, you remember, you endure. By morning, the ashes of last night's fire are cold. You stretch your legs with difficulty, feeling every ache left behind by the cold ground and yesterday's burdens. There is no time to rest. Today, as every day, the living demand your attention, and so you rise, wrap yourself in what passes for a coat, and begin again. You are greeted not by a summons for a dying elder or a feverish child, though those are never far behind, but by a boy, perhaps on the cusp of becoming a man, waiting outside your shelter with a look both hopeful and wary. He is thinner than he should be, with eyes too large for his face and hands that fidget as he speaks. You recognize him as the nephew of the old woman who died last night. It is not his grief that brings him here, though. It is something harder to name, the flicker of curiosity or desperation, or perhaps the hope that he can matter in a world that grinds down the best and worst alike. He stammers his request, but you understand before he finishes. He wants to be your apprentice, to learn what little you know, to become the next in line for a job that no one envies and everyone needs. You look him over, measuring his will against your own memory of youth. He is young, yes, but not foolish. He has watched you work. He knows, as well as anyone, what this life costs. You agree, not with ceremony, but with a tired nod and motion for him to follow as you begin your rounds. You tell him, quietly, that he is not here to learn how to heal. He is here to learn how to endure. Anyone can gather roots, you say. Anyone can bandage a wound or recite a prayer. That is not the hard part. He listens, solemn and intent, as you walk together through the camp. You teach him the rhythms of your days, the rituals and superstitions that serve more to comfort than to cure. You show him how to dig for nettle roots in frozen ground, how to dry moss by the fire, how to clean a knife with snow and ash when water is too precious to waste. He asks questions, sometimes clever, sometimes naive, and you answer as honestly as you can. You do not spare him the truth. Most of what we do, you tell him, is waiting, waiting for the body to heal itself or for the spirit to give up. You will watch and you will do what you can, and you will fail more often than you succeed, and still you will go on. You tell him about the dangers he cannot see, about the fevers that strike without warning, the wounds that rot no matter how clean the bandage, the sadness that seeps into a person and never truly leaves. You show him your dwindling supply of herbs and roots, your carefully rationed scraps of hope, and ask him if he still wants this. He does not answer right away, but he does not walk away either. You let him watch as you clean the wounds of a child who fell into a fire. You let him listen as you comfort a mother whose baby will not wake. You let him carry the water and the firewood, though his hands blister and his back aches. This is the real training, the slow breaking down of the body, the relentless erosion of certainty, the stubborn insistence on staying when it would be easier to run. That evening, as the sun drags itself down below the trees, you sit with the boy by the fire and share what little food you have left, a mouthful of boiled root, a strip of dried meat, nothing more. He eats in silence, too tired to speak, and you see the first shadows of understanding pass over his face. You tell him, as your own teacher told you, that the healer's work is not about saving lives. It is about bearing witness. We are here to remember, you say, to watch, to listen, to hold the stories when everyone else is too tired or too busy to care. He nods, though you know he does not yet truly understand. You watch him as he stares into the fire, his face flickering between hope and despair, and you feel the old sadness settle in your chest. You remember your own beginning, the way you once believed you could make a difference, that your hands and words could change the world. You want to tell him to turn back, to find another path, to save himself from what is coming. But you do not. Some lessons can only be learned through suffering. As darkness settles, you let him roll out his thin mat next to yours. You hear his breathing slow, the soft hitch of dreams or nightmares as he sleeps. You wonder how long he will last, how many winters he will endure before he too is broken by the weight of other people's pain. You hope, for his sake, that it is longer than most. You lie awake, listening to the night, and feel a bitter satisfaction in passing on your burden. The world will always need healers, always need someone to gather the pain and hold it in the quiet hours. Maybe you think he will be stronger than you. Maybe he will find meaning where you have only found endurance. Or maybe he will learn, as you have, that meaning is just another word for not giving up. In the darkness, you close your eyes and let the world turn, carrying you both toward another day of work, another day of wounds, another day of waiting. There is no comfort in it, but there is continuity, and sometimes that is enough. You wake in darkness to a sound you know too well, the harsh shouts of men, the keening cries of women, the low, panicked barking of dogs. For a moment, you think it is a nightmare, another echo of the countless nights you have spent listening for disaster. But then the cold presses in, and you realize it is real. There has been a raid. You do not run toward the chaos, but you do not linger either. By the time you reach the center of camp, the worst is already over. The raiders are gone, their shadows fading into the trees. What remains is confusion, blood, and the shivering certainty that nothing is ever truly safe. You see bodies, some moving, some still, sprawled in the dirt, surrounded by the broken detritus of a hurried escape. There are old women holding their grandchildren close, whispering prayers to spirits that seem farther away with every season. There are men, faces twisted in rage and grief, clutching spears or knives or nothing at all. You see the chief, his jaw clenched, surveying the damage as if it is a personal failing. But you do not look for the living. You look for the wounded. You find them where you always do, in the mud, beneath the open sky, already shivering, already halfway to the place where nothing can reach them. You kneel beside a boy, not yet grown, whose leg is sliced open from knee to ankle. The blood is bright against the dirty ground, and his breathing is shallow, rapid. You do not ask him to be brave. There is no bravery left. You tear strips from what used to be your blanket and press them to the wound, feeling the heat of his blood seep into your hands. Your apprentice watches, his face pale in the moonlight, but he does not flinch. You hand him a strip of sinew and tell him to hold it tight, to keep the pressure constant. His hands tremble, but he obeys. There is no time for teaching now, only doing. Next comes a woman, her arm slashed to the bone, the muscle exposed and quivering. You clean the wound with the last of your water, packing it with moss and binding it as tightly as you can. She does not cry out, only grits her teeth, her eyes fixed on something far away. You move from one body to the next, stitching flesh with coarse thread, tying off wounds, pressing ash and moss into gashes that should have been closed by a real needle and silk, not the leftovers of scavenged animals and bitter weeds. You hear the low, urgent prayers of the living, the quiet moans of those who will not last the night. You add your own silent plea to the darkness, knowing it will go unanswered. Some of the wounds are minor bruises, shallow cuts, broken fingers. Others are beyond your help. You find a man with a spear wound in his belly, the blood pooling around him, already sticky and black. He looks up at you, eyes glassy, and you know there is nothing to do but sit with him, hold his hand, and listen as his breath rattles in his chest. You promise him that his pain will be short, though you know that even lies are a kind of mercy. Your apprentice helps as best he can, fetching water, tearing cloth, murmuring half remembered prayers. You see the sweat on his brow, the growing understanding in his eyes. He is learning quickly, though you wish it was not this way. As dawn approaches, the fires burn low, and the first birds begin to call. The air is sharp and still, heavy with the scent of blood and wood smoke. The camp is quieter now, the initial panic replaced by exhaustion. You check your work, rebind wounds, whisper comfort to those who need it. You do not allow yourself to think about what comes next. Infection, fever, the slow fading of those who will not heal. You gather the dead together, their bodies already cooling, their faces peaceful in a way that the living can never manage. You help the families cover them, murmuring the old words, words that used to mean something, but now are only a barrier against despair. You add their names to your mental tally, promising yourself to record them properly when the day is done. When all is as done as it can be, you stagger back to your shelter, your hands shaking, your clothes stiff with blood and sweat. Your apprentice follows, silent, his face ashen. You sit together in the quiet, sharing a sip of cold water, the taste metallic and thin. Neither of you speaks. There are no words left. You know what comes next. The wounds you have dressed will fester. Some will live, most will not. The fever will take hold before you can gather enough herbs, before you can find the right words, before you can pretend that your hands are anything but a stopgap between suffering and the grave. You look at your apprentice and you see the question in his eyes. Is this all there is? You want to say no, to offer hope, but you cannot. You have learned over too many seasons that hope is a luxury you cannot afford. Instead, you tell him the truth. We do what we can. We watch. We wait. We endure. You close your eyes just for a moment and feel the exhaustion settle into your bones. You listen to the camp as it begins to stir, to the quiet sobs of the bereaved, to the rustle of bandages, and the slow, steady breathing of those who have survived. The world will not stop for your grief, or your pain, or your failure. When you finally sleep, it is a thin, broken thing, full of wounds you cannot close, names you cannot forget, and the cold certainty that morning will bring more of the same. But for now, you rest and hope that it is enough. The day after the raid is a slow, gray agony. There is no energy left for argument or even for tears. The wounded drift in and out of uneasy sleep, their moans rising and falling with the fitful wind. Families gather in tight circles, shoulders touching, hands always busy, mending, stirring, wiping away blood or sweat, or sometimes tears. You and your apprentice make your rounds, checking wounds, spooning out thin broth, feeling for fever, watching for infection. You know that the true toll of a raid is never clear until days have passed, and by then it is often too late to do anything but count the losses. It is a child's mother who finds you, her face as pale and still as moonlit snow. She carries her son in her arms, wrapped tightly in a blanket that smells of smoke and cold earth. His head lolls, and you do not need to ask if he is breathing. You know before she speaks, but she says the words anyway, perhaps for her own sake, perhaps because she hopes saying them aloud will change what cannot be changed. He is gone. You nod and motion for her to follow. There are rituals to be done, words to be spoken, a path to be cleared between this world and the next. These are tasks that belong to you, whether you want them or not. Your apprentice watches closely, his face drawn and anxious. This is the part of your work that is least understood and most feared. It is not enough to tend wounds or brew teas. You must also shepherd the lost and those left behind through the shadowy passage that follows death. There is no training for this. There are only the habits of sorrow, repeated until they become second nature. You choose a place near the edge of the camp, away from the noise of the living. There, you kneel with the mother and her child, your apprentice hovering just behind. Uncertain but attentive, you unwrap the child, smoothing his hair, arranging his arms in the old way, palms folded, feet together, eyes gently closed. He looks peaceful now, as if sleep might still claim him, as if hunger and pain are only stories. You light a handful of sage and sweetgrass, letting the smoke curl and drift around the small, still body. You whisper the words you have learned by heart, asking the spirits to open the path, to lead the child's soul with kindness, to let him find rest among the ancestors. Your voice is steady, but inside, your heart hammers with the weight of every other child you have sent this way. The mother is silent, her grief too large for sound. She rocks gently, eyes fixed on nothing. When the time comes, you place a small bundle, a scrap of fur, a bit of dried berry, a tiny stone carved long ago, beside the child, offerings for the journey ahead. These things matter more for the living than the dead, but you do them all the same. Your apprentice kneels beside you, unsure, waiting for direction. You nod for him to sing the old song, the one you taught him only days before. His voice is thin, but true, trembling at first, then growing steadier as he finds the shape of the melody. You join in, your voice rough, the two of you weaving sound into the heavy silence, a small rebellion against the finality of death. When the song ends, you help the mother wrap her child for burial. The ground is still hard with frost, and digging is slow work. The men take over now, cutting into the earth with dull blades, every scrape a reminder that even the ground resists your attempts to let go. You stay with the mother, offering her what comfort you can, a hand on her shoulder, a whispered word, a presence that says she is not alone. Your apprentice sits beside her too, silent, learning that sometimes there is nothing to say. Grief, you remind him later, is a wound that never truly closes. As the sun sets, the burial is finished. Stones are placed over the mound, sage burned again, the final prayers offered. The mother stands a long time in silence before turning away, her steps slow but steady. You watch her go, feeling the weight of her sorrow settle around your own shoulders, another stone in the pile you carry. You return to the camp, your apprentice close at your heels. He asks quietly how you bear it. So much loss, so much pain, so little hope. You shrug, not because you do not care, but because there is no answer that makes sense. You carry it, you say, because there is no one else to do it, and because sometimes what we do matters. Not always, not often, but sometimes. He nods, absorbing this, and you see the first lines of grief beginning to etch themselves into his young face. You wonder how long it will be before he learns to hide it, as you have, behind tired eyes and practiced hands. That night, you lie awake, listening to the camp breathe around you, the soft weeping of mothers, the restless shifting of wounded men, the quiet, stubborn heartbeat of those who remain. You whisper the names of the dead into the darkness, a litany that never grows shorter, only changes with the seasons. In the end, you know your work is not about healing, but remembering. You bear witness, you sing the songs, you lead the grieving through the dark, and hope that in doing so, you hold off the night for just a little longer. Tomorrow, there will be more wounds, more grief, more work. But tonight, you rest with the memory of a child's face, peaceful at last, and remind yourself that even in a world so full of endings, your presence is not nothing. It is midday, and the sky has the heavy, swollen look of an approaching storm. You are sitting by the fire with your apprentice, sorting through the last scraps of dried roots when the dogs begin to bark. Not the casual, lazy barking of annoyance, but sharp, urgent, a warning. The camp stills, eyes turn to the path that winds through the trees. Soon enough, a stranger appears, a white man wearing thick boots and a heavy coat, his face ruddy and pockmarked, his hair cropped close to his head in a way that looks almost unnatural. He rides a mule that looks only half alive, and behind him drags a small sled stacked with boxes. You watch from a distance as the chief and two elders greet him, their faces careful, polite, but cold. Trade is always dangerous, you know this. Sometimes it brings things you need, iron pots, good knives, salt. But often it brings trouble, a sickness of the body, a sickness of the spirit, and always, eventually, disappointment. Your apprentice lingers behind you, his curiosity at war with fear. You tell him to keep his distance, but he barely hears you. The camp is drawn to the stranger like moths to a lamp. After a brief exchange, none of it in your tongue, but you catch the meanings anyway, the man begins to unpack his wares. Blankets, beads, a few lumps of brown sugar, wrapped in dirty paper. But it is the bottles that draw the most attention. Thick glass, cloudy, each filled with a pale, chalky powder. He waves one aloft, his voice booming, promising a cure for every ailment, every pain, every sorrow. You have seen this before. Sometimes the bottle is filled with bitter powders that do nothing. Sometimes it is stronger, a sweet syrup that dulls pain, clouds the mind, leaves people sick and hollow for days after. The worst are the bottles with no label, no explanation. These, can kill as quickly as any wound. The chief asks you to come closer, to examine the medicine and give your judgment. There is pressure in his request, an edge of hope and suspicion that is almost worse than anger. You take the bottle, rolling it in your hands, sniffing at the cork. The smell is sharp, chemical, utterly alien. You know better than to taste it. The trader is already talking, faster, louder, eager to press his miracle onto desperate people. He promises that just a pinch of his powder, mixed with water, will cure fevers, pain, stomach sickness, even the cough that is killing children and elders alike. You do not have to suffer, he says, as if suffering were a simple choice, as if centuries of pain could be washed away in a cup. You look at your apprentice, his eyes bright with longing. You know what he is thinking. What if it works? What if, for once, there is something that will do what all your herbs and prayers cannot? You feel the hope in the air, sharp and hungry, and you hate it. You address the chief, careful and slow, choosing your words as if you were picking your way across thin ice. You say you do not know what is in the bottle. You say that medicines from strangers have brought trouble before, pain, sickness, even death. You remind him of stories, recent and old, where trusting outsiders led only to more grief. You feel the weight of your people's eyes on you, the hope and resentment mixing in a bitter brew. The chief listens, frowning, but the trader is quick. He pours a pinch of the powder into a cup, mixes it with water, and drinks it himself with a flourish. He smiles, waiting for applause. A few people laugh nervously. Some seem convinced. You are not. Later, when the trader is gone and his bottles have been hidden away in the chief's shelter, your apprentice asks you if you will use the medicine. You show him the bottle you managed to keep for yourself, the powder heavy in your palm. Maybe it helps, he whispers. Maybe this time. You want to believe him. You want to believe in a world where miracles arrive in glass bottles, where suffering is something that can be traded away. But you cannot. You remember the children who grew sick after tasting syrup that made them sleep too long. You remember the fever that spread through the camp after the last batch of foreign tonic, the shivering, the endless nights. You remember, and so you do not hope. That night, you sit by the fire and study the bottle. You pour a tiny bit of powder onto your tongue, more out of duty than faith. The taste is bitter, numbing. You feel no change except a deeper exhaustion, a weariness that settles into your bones. You set the bottle aside, wrapping it in cloth, hiding it away where no one else will find it. Your apprentice asks what you will tell the people. You say, Tell them we wait. Tell them we watch. Tell them not to trust what they do not know. He nods, though you can see disappointment in his eyes. He is young, and the world has not yet taken hope from him completely. You return to your mat, staring into the darkness, listening to the sounds of the camp as it settles around you. Somewhere, a baby cries. Someone coughs, long and hard. You know tomorrow you will be asked again about the medicine, about hope, about miracles. You know you will answer as you always do, with caution, with skepticism, with the grim certainty that nothing ever changes. You lie awake long after the fire has died, the bottle cold in your hand. You wonder if you have made the right choice, or if, in your caution, you have only delayed the inevitable. The world is full of cures that do not cure, of promises that break, of healers who are as powerless as everyone else. But you will keep watch. You will hold the line for as long as you can. That, you remind yourself, is the only medicine you truly have. It begins with a cough, not the dry, barking cough of winter, not the congested child's whimper you have grown to dread. This one is different. It comes from deep inside, rattling the ribs, thick and wet, and tinged with something red. At first, it is just one man, then a woman, then two children. You recognize the pattern in the way the illness spreads, quietly at first, then all at once, as if the air itself has turned against you. You watch, powerless, as the sickness tears through the camp. Each day brings a new handful of sufferers. Their eyes are bright with fever, their cheeks flushed and gaunt at the same time. They cough until they cannot breathe, sometimes spitting blood, sometimes just lying quiet, too weak to cry out. Your apprentice moves among them with you, his hands trembling but steady, his jaw set in the tight line of someone who has seen too much, too fast. You try everything. You boil water until the woodpile dwindles to nothing. You brew your bitter teas, grind dried roots, sprinkle herbs into steaming bowls, and beg the children to sip. You sing the old songs, whisper prayers to ancestors who have already proven their indifference. For every child who quiets, another begins to cough. For every mother who seems to recover, an elder's breath grows slow and shallow. The numbers are never in your favor. There is fear now, everywhere. The sickness is invisible, relentless. People wrap themselves in blankets, hide in their shelters, stop gathering at the fire. The air is thick with suspicion. If a man coughs, even once, his neighbors edge away. Mothers clutch their children closer, eyes darting, looking for signs of hope or doom in your face. The chief sends for you. You find him lying beneath a stack of furs, face pale, breath shallow, coughing into a cloth stained with blood. He looks smaller than you remember, his authority shriveled by pain. He asks if you have anything new, anything from the bottle the traitor left, any miracle hidden in your bag. You give him willow bark for the pain and say nothing about miracles. He thanks you anyway, the way a man thanks someone for sitting beside him as the river rises and the boat sinks. Your apprentice asks you, late at night, if you have seen this sickness before. You nod, though you know every plague is both old and new. You tell him that some years the sickness passes by, leaving only stories. Other years it lingers, carving holes in families, stealing the laughter from the camp for seasons at a time. He asks if it will end soon. You say what you must. It always ends. Everything does. He turns away, unsatisfied, but you have no other truth to offer. Your own body aches, your throat burns. Each morning you wake, surprised to be alive. You do not know if this is luck or just another delay. You wonder if the powder in the bottle would help, but you do not try it. You have seen what it does: dulls the mind, saps the spirit, leaves people hollow and helpless when the fever breaks. You want more for your people, but the world does not care what you want. The worst is the children. They grow silent, lose interest in play, curl up in their mother's laps and whimper in their sleep. You sit with them, wiping their foreheads, singing the same lullabies your own mother sang. You promise them the fever will pass, that they will run again, that the world will be kind. You lie as gently as you can. The camp grows quieter with each passing day. Fewer fires burn at night. Fewer voices call out in the morning. The dogs sense the change. They stop begging, stop barking, slink through the shadows as if expecting to be next. Your apprentice asks you if there is anything more to do. You shake your head and tell him, softly, that sometimes all you can do is wait and remember. You help bury the dead. There is no ceremony left, no time for proper rites. The ground is frozen, and your hands crack and bleed as you dig. You mark the graves with stones, whispering names into the cold wind, promising yourself you will write them down when you have the strength. Your record grows longer, the lines crowded and jagged, the ink running with tears you refuse to let fall. Some recover, some do not. You stop trying to predict who will make it and who will not. The sickness has its own rules, and it does not care for fairness or logic or the order you try to impose. You are left with your old hollow routine: mix herbs, offer water, hold hands, watch, wait. At night, you sit with your apprentice by the dwindling fire. He asks if you are afraid. You look at your hands, the skin worn thin, and tell him the truth. I am always afraid, but fear does not end the world. It only makes it harder to live. He nods, and you see in his eyes the same exhaustion that lives in your own. Together you keep watch, guarding the thin line between the living and the dead, listening to the labored breathing of a camp that has known too many winters, too many sorrows. Tomorrow, you will rise and do it all again, not because you believe it will matter, but because it is all you know how to do, because the healer's place is always here, at the edge of hope, holding the line as the world falls away. Night comes, heavy and absolute, and you sit alone by the last weak fire. The camp is quieter than you ever remember. The fever has thinned the world, leaving too much space between the shelters, too much silence where laughter and quarrels once grew like weeds. The dogs do not bark. Even the wind has given up, pressing listlessly at the corners of the camp before moving on. The shadows seem longer now, stretching toward you as if the darkness itself expects something more. You cradle your hands over the coals, feeling the ache in your bones, an ache that no salve or tea will ease. You wonder, not for the first time, how many years you have carried this work, how many nights you have waited for rest that never comes. There is no answer. There are only the faces you remember, the old man with his rotten leg, the young mothers with empty arms, the children who faded so quickly you barely learned their names. You ask yourself, quietly, who will heal the healer? Who will listen when your own breath grows ragged, when the pain in your belly becomes more than a nuisance, when your hands shake so badly you can no longer tie a knot or thread a needle? You know the answer already. No one. This is the final lesson, the one your teacher did not have words for. The healer is not meant to be mended. Your suffering is not a story that needs a witness. You look at your apprentice, asleep near the cold wall, his face still soft with the last traces of hope. You think of all the things you have not told him, all the warnings you have held back, not out of cruelty, but because some truths only reveal themselves in the work, in the days and nights that grind a person down to the bone. You hope he is stronger than you. You hope he learns to hold on to something, even if it is just habit. The world does not pause for your pain. Somewhere, a child coughs in the dark. A mother stirs beside a dying husband. A dog noses at the door, hoping for warmth. You rise because that is what you do, and check the fires, check the sick, murmur comfort to those who are half asleep and half in the other world. You pour another cup of bitter tea, though you know it will do little. You sit by the chief, who barely opens his eyes, his breath shallow and stubborn. You wipe his brow and squeeze his hand, both of you too tired to pretend at words. There is no magic, no wisdom left in your bag. You have nothing to offer but your presence, an old habit, a patchwork of small kindnesses in a world that no longer remembers what kindness is supposed to feel like. You hum a song, not for the spirits, not for the dying, but for yourself, a lullaby that tastes like dust and old memories. You think about leaving, about walking into the forest and letting the world go on without you. You think about what it would mean to let go, to finally rest, but you know you will not. You cannot. There are too many needs, too many voices, too many unfinished tasks. The healer is not allowed to live before the story is done, and the story, it seems, is never done. In the small hours, you tend the fire until it is little more than ash and faint glow. You listen to the camp's breathing, the uneven rhythm of those who have survived, those who are still fighting, those who do not even know the war is almost lost. You write a few more lines in your record, though your hands shake so badly the marks blur together. You write the names of the last few who have passed, promising yourself you will remember, even if no one else does. You wonder if, after you are gone, someone will find your record and understand what it meant to live in these days, how much pain can fit into a single life, how little stands between endurance and defeat. Or maybe they will throw it on the fire, using it for a moment's warmth, and that too will be enough. Dawn is still a rumor, a pale line on the horizon when you finally let yourself lie down beside your apprentice. Your bones grind together, your muscles ache, but sleep comes anyway, heavy and irresistible. You let yourself drift, not into dreams, there are none left, but into a silence so complete that even your own name seems to disappear. When you wake, you will rise again, because that is the only answer you have ever found. The world will ask more of you, and you will give what you have until there is nothing left. You will patch wounds, bury the dead, sing old songs to comfort the living, and write the last names in your book. This is your medicine. This is your history. You are the healer. There is no end, only the next long night, the next faint hope, and the stubborn, inexplicable act of continuing